We are joined today by Beverly Dowdall, a weaver and a spinner, as well as a retired nurse from Southampton Hospital, currently living in Eastleigh since 1979. But Beverly, you arrived in 1971. Beverly, tell us, where were you born and where did you grow up?
Well, I was born in Jamaica in a little town called Black River, which is on the south coast of Jamaica. And when I was about 6 or 7, my father moved to Mandeville, which is sort of in the middle of the island. And we didn't have sea there, just an island. It's a town. And I grew up there. I went to school there, and I grew up there. I'm one of 12. I've got a large family.
That's a large family.
Yes.
12 children.
12 children, and I'm the eldest. We were always noisy because, kids, we were always noisy. And my father used to complain about the noise, but that didn't stop us, And whenever we meet, it's the same thing, It's noise and noise and noise and something with noise, So.
And did you grow up in a close-knit family with your cousins, relatives and stuff?
No, because
12 of you.
No, you see, because he moved us to Mandeville. Mm-hmm. He was a tailor, and he came to Mandeville to work, and he had a tailor shop. But years later, he decided that there was no money in tailoring. So he went to work with the bauxite company, because at that time, in the 50s, the Americans had come down and they were developing bauxite, farming, mining bauxite.
Yes.
And he got a job there, and he worked there for many years.
And was that far away from where you grew up, or
well, it's really
did he have to travel?
He had to travel, because Mandeville is 2,500 feet above sea level.
Wow, okay.
And he had to travel from Mandeville and go back into St. Elizabeth. There was a huge plain there, they called the Pedro Plains, and that's where they found the bauxite. So every morning he would get up at 4 o'clock in the morning. We would have to get up and cook his lunch and send him off to work, or, him going off to work. So he would go down and come back and go down and come back every day. So that was it. My mother was a dressmaker, and she was really I think I must have inherited some of her talent, because she was really she would do, what I'm thinking is, in my older years, as quite innovative things. She used to make shrouds, all the shrouds, from the district. She would sew them. Because, again, we didn't have funeral parlors and things like that. So whenever somebody in the district died, everybody, all the adults in the district would participate to make certain that the funeral went good. And she used to make the shrouds.
So that was her business?
Well, I don't know if she made business from it, but she just did it.
As a community thing?
Yes.
Right.
You see, and everybody, we knew everybody. There was a baker in the village. There was a carpenter. There was a stonemason, and so on and so forth. So everybody would come together, and that was how it happened. And it's everybody knows everybody's business, and So it was a close community, but we were the only family there that came in. We didn't we didn't grow up. It wasn't our family, because we came from 50 odd miles away and moved there. So we were classed as strangers, but we just carried on.
Classed as strangers?
Yes, we were, incomers.
And what did you eventually do? Did you stay there? Did you study there? What did you eventually do?
I went to school there, and I went to the local grammar school. I was considered to be very bright, and I won a scholarship, a government scholarship.
Wonderful.
And went to the local grammar school. And when I left the grammar school, I got myself a place at the University of the West Indies to do nursing. That was what I did. And I did my training, and I worked in the intensive care unit for a while. But I wanted to become a ward sister, because nursing salaries in those days were badly paid.
Was it in the same district, or did you
No,
have to
I
go
went
to the capital?
I went to the capital. Went to Kingston.
Right.
And
Is that
where the university was?
But is that where the hospital was?
Yes.
The only hospital at that time?
Oh no, there were hospitals almost in every parish. Jamaica's divided up into parishes,
Right.
and there were hospitals, what we used to call government hospitals, but there were government hospitals almost in every parish, and in some places there were 2 or 3 hospitals. But they didn't do any training. So to get at your training, you had to go to Kingston, and there were 2 training hospitals. One was at the university, and one was at the Kingston Public Hospital,
Right.
where we could train as nurses.
And what's that sort of distance from where you lived?
70, nearly 100 miles.
Okay.
Yeah, so you didn't go home. You had to stay there. Come home on your days off if you were lucky.
And tell us a little bit about that. So you worked at the hospital?
Yeah, and you lived in.
Right.
Student nurses were required to live in, and I was 18. And in those days, you were deemed to be an adult at 21. So if you took ill, matron signed your consent form, because you had to have an adult to sign your consent. Matron acted as loco parentis and signed our consent forms if we were poorly. But we lived in the nurses' home. There were 300 student nurses, and 150 trained nurses lived on campus on the university side.
So that's a lot.
Yes. It was, a city bus went through the university grounds from one end to the other. It was a huge campus. It was Mona. It was called Mona. That was a huge campus. And of course, further down the road, there was the university itself. So,
how was life in those days for you?
Well, the thing
you moved
yes,
from one place
yes,
of Jamaica
yeah,
to a next place
yes,
in Jamaica, 50
yes,
something miles
yes,
away. You ended
yeah,
up studying there, the grammar school,
yeah,
university.
yeah.
But how was life? What was the country like? What was
the country? Certainly, as a child and a young person growing up, that was what we knew. The land was fertile. The land was fruitful,
yeah,
and we had an acre of land where, I grew up. So we had trees. We had mangoes and fruit trees.
Lovely.
And star apple and breadfruit and coconut, and all those things grew on the tangerines. All this grew on the land. And of course, my father, we planted foods. It was a huge garden, if you know what I mean.
Yes.
So we planted yams and sweet potatoes and gungo peas. So we were always planting things.
So everything that you would get in the exotic section of Asda.
That's correct. Was everyday food.
Right.
Yes.
You grew up in it and around it.
We grew up in it and around it. Yeah. And of course we had pigs and chickens and rabbits. We didn't have any cows because the land wasn't big enough for cows, and I don't think my father knew much about it anyway. But we had pigs, and of course all the peelings and things like that went to the pigs and the chickens. So that was, we and of course, growing up as a child, we all had chores. You had to get up every morning, and everybody knew what they had to do. You didn't argue about it. You did it before you went to school. And when you came home, you had chores. So you had to do your chores in the evenings.
So a pretty disciplined life.
It was. Oh yes, it was. And you just had to do it.
Yeah.
And of course there were certain rules that was made up as they went along.
By you and your siblings?
No,
your
by
parents?
my stepmother. I wasn't allowed to whistle. And I grew up as a tomboy. My brothers, I had 3 brothers. Then I had a sister. So you played with the boys. So you played.
Absolutely, yeah.
Yeah. And I wasn't allowed to whistle, and I wasn't allowed to climb trees, but that didn't stop me. And when I said, why can't I do so? Because you're a girl. Why can't you do it? Because you're a girl. And I used to hate this bit because you're a girl. And I used to argue with it about it because they used to say. And I sort of had rules for myself. When I grow up, I'm not going to do this. And when I grow up, I'm not going to do that, you know. So.
You mean when you grow up, you will whistle?
Oh, yes. Yes. Yeah. I played cricket and I played football, and because my dad said you there was enough of you in this house, you don't have to play with the neighbors' children. So and there was enough of us, so we played amongst each other. So the only people I could play with were the boys.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Makes sense.
Yeah.
Sounds practical. But tell us, Beverly, when did you leave and why did you leave?
Jamaica. I left Jamaica and I worked in the Cayman Islands for a year after I qualified. I qualified as a general nurse and I did my midwifery. And that, I still wanted to be a ward sister, you understand.
Right.
So I thought, right, if I specialize, I would have the skills to work in a specialist group. And in those days, we had a professor who had actually set up an intensive care service, in the only intensive care department on the island. And the matron, when you qualified, matron called you and went through your training with you,
right,
and determined what you were deemed to be good at. Do you understand?
Yes, yes.
So she said to me, I'm going to put you in the intensive care unit because you were very good at what was required.
And that's the intensive care unit in Jamaica?
In Jamaica.
Okay, so,
yeah.
Right.
Yeah. So I sort of, I didn't really want to go, but she felt that was where I was suited. So I bargained with her. You don't bargain with matron. I said to her, yes, I'll work there, but I want to do my midwifery. So if I could get onto the next midwifery school, I would work in the unit. And she said, yes, but you have to work for 10 months there until the next course, because they only had 2 courses a year.
Right.
So I had to wait for the next. So I worked there, and I honed all my skills in intensive care unit there. And then I thought, yeah, I'd quite like to do this. So that was what spurred me to come to England to do the intensive care course at Southampton.
So when was that?
I went to Cayman because I couldn't earn enough in Jamaica to live, not on the nurse's salary. So I went to the Cayman Islands, and I was earning literally twice the salary I was getting in Jamaica. And I worked there for a year. And during that year, I saved up enough money to come to England. I paid my way, and I came to England, and I applied in Jamaica to do the course. So when I came here, I came from one hospital literally to the other, so.
And was that, what year was that?
1971, January of 1971, I landed in Jamaica, in England.
In England.
Oh man, it was cold. And in the 1971, in 1970s, there was I don't know if you know much about West Indian history, but at that time, people were hijacking planes, and there were the boat people in the Vietnam boat people, but we had boat people in the Caribbean as well, because these people from Cuba were running away from Castro, and they were they were heading to America, but the Caribbean Sea is a bit so quite a few of them ended up in the Caymans and in Jamaica, and people were hijacking planes and they were running away from the Vietnamese, who are these young men. So they were take me to Cuba. They were hijacking planes and taking them to Cuba. That was happening in the Caribbean. So I landed at the airport, and I looked up and I saw the sun, and I kept thinking, that can't be the sun, because I can look at it. And I kept thinking, I wonder if I could hijack the plane back to Jamaica. But, all these weird things go through your mind, So I wasn't met at the airport. I met this porter, and he said, "Where are you going?" And I told him. So he took me to this information place, and they rang the hospital, and the hospital said I was to take the train and come to Southampton. And when I got to Southampton, I was to go to the hospital and report to the hospital. And I kept thinking, we don't do this in Jamaica. If we had a nurse who comes from abroad, one of us, we would be somebody, a delegation at the airport to meet them. And I fully expected that. It didn't happen.
Well, what are your most vivid memories of home?
Well, like I said, it's the noise and the birds and the dogs. And 4 o'clock in the morning, it would wake you up. You didn't have a choice. You didn't need an alarm because the birds would start singing and competing. The dogs would start barking because they didn't want I don't know. And the sun would rise pretty early, especially in the summer, and straight into your bedroom, So you had to get up anyway. So that was the memories. That was the memories I had. And of course, then it was quieter. Then you didn't have so many cars. You didn't have people blowing too many horns and things like that. So it really was just the birds singing. And there was a church in Mandeville, and they had what we call chiming bells. So you would hear the bells ringing, and you would hear the clocks, the big clock in Mandeville town, because we were a mile from Mandeville town where we lived, and you could actually hear the clock telling you the time. And we had a train from Kingston to Mobay every day. Morning it would go to Mobay, afternoon it would go back to Kingston, and this train made a noise. So you could actually put your watch. You could time your watch by the sound from the train.
You mean the whistle or the steam?
No, the whistle. Yes, yeah. So we would hear it, and we would know that was the time. So those are the things that were vivid memories.
Would you say those are your last memories of home?
Well, those are the romantic memories I have of home. Mm-hmm. My last memories of home was at arriving in the Palisadoes airport and saying goodbye to my father. That was quite emotional, because he didn't want me to go. And to be fair, I didn't tell him until the week before.
Such a big blow to the man.
No, well, you see,
eldest daughter.
Yeah, I graduated, and I went back to Mandeville, and I realized that I'd left Jamaica. For 4 years, left Mandeville for 4 years. And I'd grown, and I thought, I really don't want to live here under the same rules as he had imposed, So I thought, no, I need to go. I need to go someplace else to fly my wing, spread my wings. So this was when I thought, no, I'd go to England and see what it is like. I never wanted to go to America, funnily enough, because a lot of nurses were going to America to work. But I didn't want to. I wanted to go to England. I don't know about other young people, but when I thought I was going on an adventure, you understand? Yeah. It was an adventure. So I arrived at the airport with my 2 suitcases.
Beverly, just continue that, the travel journey to Southampton, from Jamaica. And just tell us, was it by aeroplane or did you come by ship?
I flew.
You flew first?
Yes.
Right. That's why you ended up in Heathrow.
Yes, because somebody said to me, you don't want to go across the Atlantic in winter because the seas are rough.
Also, there was an option to take a ship?
Oh, yes.
All right.
Yes, because we had banana boats, you see.
Okay.
And they would take passengers. So you could book a flight, a seat, a berth on the banana boat from from Kingston to Southampton, because the banana boats came here.
Interesting.
So, but somebody said to me, you don't want to do that. And so I thought, no. So I became my BOAC, British Overseas Airways, and which later became British Airways. It was the same.
Yeah, it later became what, British West Indian International Airlines.
Or something like that, yes, that's right, yeah. So what we have a joke about that in Jamaica, you know, BWIA, but will I arrive? Or is it a better wait, indefinite arrival, you know?
You heard it first here.
So anyway, that's a joke, you know.
It's wonderful.
So I came. We left the evening of the 5th of January at 6 o'clock in the evening, just as the sun was going down, and we arrived the next morning at 10 a.m. at Heathrow. And I came off the plane, managed to find my suitcases, and you know, the gods were with me, because a little gentleman came up to me. He was an Irishman. Don't ask me what his name was, and he was a porter. And he took my cases and he says, "Where are you going?" And I explained to him. So he took me to the information desk, and I think I must have looked lost. I don't know, but I was lost, you know, standing there. And he took me then. He showed me where to buy the tickets, which I had cash on me, sterling, you know, cash on me. And he showed me where to go and get the tickets I had to get a bus to Woking, a coach to Woking. And then I had to wait in this very cold room and get the train from Woking to Southampton, and then get a taxi.
So that was a lot, right? Because
yes.
Nobody was there to wait for you.
No.
And you said you had that anticipation that somebody would be there.
Yeah, I trusted that somebody would be there to wait to collect me. But it didn't happen. So
would it be safe to say it was a tough journey?
It was not what I expected, and that's the truth. I suppose, you know, you're treated a certain way in Jamaica, and we treated nurses who came here in a certain way, and I expect that sort of reciprocation, and it didn't happen.
What does that mean? So people coming to Jamaica, like nurses
coming to Jamaica,
they held a high regard, you mean?
Well, nurses in Jamaica in those days were held in high regard.
Right.
You know, and for some unknown reason, I used to travel from Kingston to Mandeville, and I would get on the bus, and they knew I was a nurse. I don't know how. I never broadcast it, but you know, nurses and doctors and teachers were held in high esteem when I was a child growing up. You know, so, but you know, a stranger coming to a strange land, and you were coming you were traveling from point A to point B in a strange land. I did expect to be. The expectation was there, and that was the first disappointment I had about England. So that was it. So, but I arrived, and I was put in this room, which is about the same size as the rooms in the nurses' home in Jamaica. So that was okay, you know.
Yeah.
So.
And where was that in
the old nurses' home?
I don't know.
If you go to Southampton General, they built this new, really nice hospital now, new hospital.
Yes.
Well, there was an old hospital there, what they used to call the Borough. And at the side of the hospital, there was the nurses' home.
Okay.
And I think the building is still there. That nurses' home building is still there. But I don't think it's used for people to live in anymore. But it's still there.
So you got the train from Woking.
Yes.
And you arrived in Southampton.
Yes.
And you got straight into your room.
Yeah, I got a taxi.
Oh, right.
When I got there, I was met at the door. You had to knock. You know, the door was locked. It wasn't open. You know, you had to knock, and this home sister came out, and you know, you got in, and then you were taken to your room and showed your room. And of course you were given all sorts of rules and regulations of thou shalt nots, lots of thou shalt nots. So, but I was used to that,
right.
You know, because we had rules in Jamaica.
Yes.
You can imagine 300 women, young women, in the nurses' home. in Jamaica. It was the same thing here.
Right.
Nurses, all nurses living in the nurses' home. There were rules, and so the rules didn't bother me because
you were accustomed.
I was accustomed to it, and I obeyed the rules. That really was, and it was cold. Oh man, oh man, oh man.
It was a baptism of fire.
Yes, only by ice.
A baptism by fire, but only ice.
Yes, and I was driving down.
Yes.
From on the train, and you sort of look out. Where are you going? Look out, and I saw this smoke coming out of all the houses, and I kept thinking, oh, what sort of house is that with all these smoke coming out the chimneys? So you had the chimneys, and
yes.
Because we don't have that at home, so it was a bit strange. There are still things in England, 50 years on, that words 50 years on that I questioned. I still question them, and people, because I was brought up, and I remember me and one of the nursing officer had a discussion, and a lively discussion about my English, and I told her.
So that leads me on to the next question, right? What were your initial impressions of Southampton?
Well, Southampton was a port, and I knew it was.
Right.
When I came, the civic centre was that is a constant. But if you drive along at the back of the civic centre,
yes,
there was a rose garden there. There was a big roundabout. The bit of the road that goes down to the railway station.
Yes,
there was a big roundabout there, and it was a rose garden. Right. And I remember that. And of course, the parks are still there, and there were cinemas there. So. And lots of nice little boutique type shops that you could go in and buy things. So along the, down above bar and down below bar.
Yes.
And there was a nightclub at the bottom of town called The Pier. And we used to go down there to dance. That's where I met my husband.
Wonderful.
So it was a city like, and it was just as noisy as Kingston. It was.
Right. So it was just a hustle and bustle.
Yes.
Is what you're saying.
But I did like the ancient buildings, like above bar and the bar gate, and the museums. That was quite good.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Anything else about the early years arriving? Like, who supported you in those early years? Would you say?
Not really. I sort of, being an only child and being the eldest child, you learn to be self-sufficient, and you learn from an early age. You're the eldest. You have to look after the other people. So there's nobody to look after me. So, and I made the decision to come here. So I was going to survive, and I was going to do it. And I kept telling myself, Bev, it's only till October. Bev, it's only till October. But it didn't happen quite like that. So, but I fair to say that when I met my first husband, Alan, and his mother, they were very supportive of me, and he in himself was quite supportive, although he had a wicked sense of humour. So he was, so that was, I would say, he was supportive of me. But I didn't meet very many Jamaicans. I didn't meet very many West Indians until I think I met I had a nurse at the hospital, and I was told about the Derby Road, that sort of Caribbean community. So I then met a few people, but my husband did not approve of me coming down to that area. Because I used to come down. I said to him one day, I was told I could go down to Derby Road to buy Caribbean food.
Yes.
And he said, okay, I'll take you down to Derby Road, but you have to promise me that you won't go down there on your own, not even in the middle day. But of course, in those days, that road had an unsavory history. So I understand why he said that. So I would come down in the day and meet him, because he worked at God's House Tower, the museum. there. That was his job.
Okay. Right.
And so I would go down there, and then he would, and it's lunchtime, he would drive me up to Derby Road, and he would wait in the car while I bought what was there, and I would go.
And so was it West Indian shops, or was it?
It was Indian shops that sold West Indian food.
So a bit like Ram.
Yes, that's right. And
some of the shops that are still there.
They're still there, yes. Yeah. So I could get my yam and my sweet potato and my spices. And
that's really good, because that's way back in the 70s.
That was in the 70s, yes.
You were able to get it.
I was able to get them because whenever I got homesick, and of course, my Alan was English, but he did like West Indian food.
So when you describe your early experience, food plays a part.
Oh God, yes,
of it.
yes. And whenever I got homesick, and which was regular, I would make West Indian food.
Yes.
Because I didn't like English food; it was tasteless as far as I was concerned.
But how long after did you, when you arrived in Southampton, did you get familiar with Derby Road, the food, the shopping?
About 3 to 6 months, I should think.
Okay.
Yeah.
So what was that initial period when you arrived with the food and with the work? Tell us a little bit about that.
Well, there was food you could eat in there's a hospital canteen. There was a big canteen there, and the food was cooked in the kitchen. But it was food. It filled the gap, but it didn't satisfy, if you know what I mean. So...
well, no, you tell us what it means.
It was food.
Right.
And you ate it because there was nothing else to eat. But when you feel really you want something different, you want home food, that was satisfying. You cook it and really enjoy it, and you think, that's good. Yeah. So that's what I mean about it would fill the gap, it would fill the hunger, but it just didn't hit. The place. So
it was that culture shock.
Yes.
Is
yes.
what you experienced.
Yes, yeah. And of course, when you're homesick, and to this day, every so often, I want some what I call proper food. So I go and buy what I call proper food.
What was the job like? Tell us a little bit about that in those early days.
The job was hard. Mm-hmm. There were various issues with me and the manager. But you see, we were using the same equipment. Mm-hmm. We were dealing with the same people, the same patients with the same illnesses as in Jamaica. So that wasn't a problem, although it was hard work. You were on your ball, you had all these machines going, making noises, and, there were patients there lying that you needed to be watch all the time, doing things to them because they were on life support machines. That was fine. I grew up with that. Well, I worked in the intensive care, and it was the same system in Kingston, in the UC, as it was here.
Right.
But there were various issues, and I dealt with it. I'm very outspoken, and I dealt with it in my own way. Sometimes it wasn't what I would, on reflection, I didn't think it was what I did was right. But when you're young and you realize you've traveled 4,000 miles to come here, and I was fairly fearless because that's how I was brought up. Mm-hmm. I was brought up to be this outspoken young woman.
And are you referring to like a cultural issue?
It was cultural. It was cultural, yes. Mm-hmm. And I wasn't going to take it, so I spoke out.
Do you specifically mean racism?
A little bit of that, okay. Yes. Okay.
So you encountered that in the early days?
Oh God, yes. Mm-hmm. Yes, from the first day I landed, I encountered it. Mm-hmm. So, and you see, I grew up in Jamaica, where we had English people, Poles, Cubans, people from Africa, Europeans of all different countries that came to Jamaica. And so Americans, they were all there in this big pot. and we rubbed on together. We have never had, in my days, we've never had a race riot in Jamaica. It didn't exist. Everybody got on. You didn't like, people you didn't like, but it didn't matter. We never had, So I suppose, and I was at 24. I was very well read, and the books I read didn't deal with culture and race. So it was a huge culture shock, and there was no what they call it, underdogs. When you came here, there was this class structure. But I didn't meet it in Jamaica. I didn't meet it at the university. Mm-hmm. And then to come here to face it was actually quite shocking. So.
And then you established already, you came on your own.
And I came on my own.
And you were here on your own, and you started work how soon after when you arrived?
Well, I arrived the Thursday.
Yeah.
And I started working the Monday.
What, the Monday?
Yes.
Just after that Thursday?
Yes. There was no break, They were desperate for intensive care nurses.
Right.
And I'd had intensive care experience in Jamaica. Mm-hmm. So it was a godsend. So I started working the following Monday.
So you were classed as a Windrush person?
What part of the Windrush generation?
Yes. Part of the Windrush generation.
Yeah.
Well, and that is very interesting as well. And experiencing that sort of cultural clash of identity. Yeah. You still powered through.
Oh, I did. Yes. No. I still do to this day.